sort of person. I'm very fixed in nature when it comes to very specific things, and TV shows is one of those things. So a lot of these I've been watching all the time for years. Don't judge me, it's just my thing. I'm that person. Every time you call me, I'm watching the same show I was watching 2 months ago. I'm binging the same show, and you're like, didn't you just watch that? Yes I did. So this video will also feature, like, so I have my MacBook, and this video will also feature typing sounds, keyboard sounds, because I am going to read you the synopsis of the show, and then I will ramble about the show, whatever comes to mind about the show, why I like it, my view of what the show is really about, whatever. So, oh, there's sirens. I hope whoever needs them is okay. Quick moment for them. Okay. So, I have my list here. Now, let me just say, little disclaimers. TV show wise, the sort of TV shows that I'm into, I like a lot of, they call them period pieces, basically things that are set back in like medieval times, you know, historical, semi-historical, but you know, some fiction mixed in, like Viking TV shows and things like that. So if you're sitting here thinking about, like, this is gonna be a ramble about the Vampire Diaries, it's not. That's not one of my favorites. I might make references to that, but I just felt like I should put that out there because a lot of people in my age bracket don't enjoy the same sort of shows I do, and their favorites are ones that I have watched and I have enjoyed, but they're not my favorites, right? So you will see a lot of, like, period pieces, as they call them, TV shows sprinkled throughout my list. And it's funny because my taste in TV shows is very different from my taste in movies. So with movies, my favorite genre is thrillers. And I actually put a poll up on Instagram this morning or this afternoon asking for some thriller movie recommendations because I was in the mood for one, but I'm always in the mood for one. Now, there is a very, very big difference between horror movies and thrillers, okay? I cannot stomach horror, okay? I'm very, very sensitive to things dealing with demons and possession, and it makes my skin crawl, I cringe, it makes my entire body hurt, I cannot handle it, which is funny because in books, I like supernatural, I like reading about supernatural things, nothing possession-wise, that still creeps me, that's never okay. Like, if your favorite movie is Insidious, which I had a friend in high school who forced me to watch those movies with her every time I would spend the night over her house because they were her absolute favorites. Peace and love, you're crazy. Something's wrong with you, I'm concerned, I'm scared, alright? Those movies scarred me for life. Okay, so horror is a hard no for me, but I love thrillers, and thrillers are things like there's somebody in your house. You know, examples, everyone knows the movie When a Stranger Calls, pretty much everyone, that's an example. There's a movie on Netflix called Open House, I watched that was pretty good. There's a movie I just recently watched last year, it came out on Netflix, I believe it's called Intrusion, I mentioned it in a ramble once, not too long after I watched it. I don't want to tell you what it's about. It wasn't a someone's in your house thriller. It was someone in this movie is not who they seem to be sort of thriller, and we had to figure out what was really going on. It was really good. I liked it. But this video specifically is about TV shows, 7 minutes in, and I haven't gotten to the point, so without further ado, I know I already said that, but let's get into it. So number one on my list kind of borders on horror. So I know it makes me a hypocrite I'm pretty much binging Teen Wolf. Now, for those who don't know what this show is about, let me pull it up. Hi. Sorry about that. Some people came home, parked right outside, in front of my window, and sat in the car for 10 minutes and blasted R&B music. We love that. We love that for us. So, and then in that process, my heater came on, which in my last video, I filmed through my heater. No one in the comments said that it was too loud, so I'm gonna film through my heater all winter unless I start getting comments like this was really distracting, I couldn't enjoy the video, and then I'll stop. But anywho, so the synopsis of Teen Wolf is about a boy, a high schooler named Scott McCall, and it says Scott's a non-athletic, socially awkward high school sophomore, but a single wolf bite changes everything. Now he's the popular star of his lacrosse team and dating the new girl in town. But Scott's new abilities also pull him into the middle of a war between werewolves and werewolf hunters. So, okay. So, where do I begin? I love Teen Wolf for multiple reasons. I think the main reason I love Teen Wolf is the sense of loyalty between the wolf pack. Now, if you've never seen Teen Wolf, it's so hard to tell you all my favorite moments and things without spoiling things. I will say I was not a fan of Allison. If you've watched Teen Wolf, you know what I'm talking about. I was not a fan of Allison. I really loved Malia, which is so crazy because everyone hated Malia, fan-wise. And she was my favorite female lead in the show. She didn't get introduced until season 3, I believe, 3 or 4. But she was phenomenal. I effing loved Malia. But basically in the show, in episode 1, Scott gets bitten and you start to see his life drastically change as he is transitioning into a werewolf, but also as he becomes more aware of this entire new world that he had no clue about. He didn't know that his life was going to be in danger because there are people out there that hate werewolves and will be hunting those like him. He didn't know pack hierarchy, the relationship between an alpha and a beta and what an omega is and his place within a pack and things like that. It's really about him maturing as a person, as a guy. And episode 1, there's also a girl named Allison, who I just told you I don't like really, who gets introduced, who's the new girl, and they start dating and all this, and it's cute or whatever, but it was that new puppy love sort of thing, and it was genuinely really cute. But just Allison as a character, she tried to be strong. Allison goes through something that I can't spoil if you've never seen it, where similar to Scott, she's a human, she doesn't get bitten, but similar to Scott, she's forced to mature more quickly. Something awful and dramatic happens, right? And so because of that event, she becomes angry and bitter, and she blames the world for what happened. And so she's the kind of character that uses her anger and that bitterness as fuel to become strong, but really that's not strength. That's just you running on fumes. That's just you slowly turning into a bad person. She was turning into an awful person when she joined her grandfather in the family business. If you've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, I'm not a fan of Allison. My main reason for liking it is you get a little bit of everything. You get that high school, drama, but you also get some supernatural elements that are really cool, sometimes scary, to be honest. And then has such a pure heart. He really is a pure person. He's a good man. He tries his best to help people, anyone and everyone, no matter what, even at detriment to himself and his own life. He's got a sense of honor and integrity about him that is rare in young people, and I enjoy his character. But there's something about Styles, his best friend. Styles is that witty, he's super smart. He's also a nerd, awkward, gangly, and he's hilarious. But it might not be everyone's cup of tea, his humor, but he's hilarious. He's witty. I would say Styles, to be honest, is the glue of the pack, because everyone turns to him when they don't know what to do. Everyone kind of turns to Styles, even though Styles kind of defers to Scott because of his place in the pack. Everyone, including Scott, turns to Styles when they're at a loss. He's just the glue, and he's amazing. So, moving on from Teen Wolf, the next thing on the list is one of those period pieces I told you about that I really enjoy back in that sort of time frame and era, and it is called The Last Kingdom. If you've not heard of The Last Kingdom, what are you doing? I have been a fan of this show since it first aired on Netflix years ago, since season 1. They are currently on season 5. I think it's the final season as well. That is going to be coming out soon. But this show, I did Teen Wolf first, but if I'm being honest, Teen Wolf and The Last Kingdom are tied for first place. I cannot pick which one I love more. They're both phenomenal shows in my opinion. I think I might watch The Last Kingdom more than Teen Wolf, because Teen Wolf is one of those shows that it can be emotionally taxing and draining, because there's so much that happens over the course of all the seasons that they have, and a lot of it is emotional, and so I can only watch that about 2 times a year, at the beginning and the end. But The Last Kingdom is a show that I can literally go through all 4 seasons that are currently available, maybe give it like a few weeks in between, and then binge all 4 seasons. Like I can literally watch it back to back. I love this show. It's a little less intense emotionally. Now, let's pull up the synopsis of The Last Kingdom. I'm gonna go to a different site because Netflix is only giving me the breakdown of episode 1, and I want the synopsis of the entire show. Okay, so on Prime, Amazon Prime, the breakdown of The Last Kingdom is a story of redemption, vengeance, and self-discovery set against the birth of England. This drama series follows young warrior and outsider Uhtred on a fierce mission to reclaim his birthright. The Last Kingdom combines real historical figures and events with fiction, retelling the story of King Alfred the Great and his desire to unite the many separate kingdoms into what could become England. And to give Netflix some credit, they tell you that season 1 is about, or episode 1, abducted by a Viking warlord after his father is slain in battle. Young Uhtred adopts the Norse way of life until tragedy befalls his family. So that's what it's about. It starts off when he's a boy, when Uhtred is a boy, and as you just heard, something happens in his family, and then he gets abducted by a completely different group of people that he's used to. So he is raised Christian, raised and baptized Christian, and then he gets abducted by these Vikings, and they are Danes. And so is an adult version of Uhtred, and it's Alexander Draymond. And the scene, he slicks back his hair, and you see y'all, he is fine. Okay. Anywho, I lost my train of thought because I'm thinking about his good looks, but that's not why I like the show. It's just, it's good to have some eye candy in the show. But so another key thing is, first of all, the integrity of Uhtred, right? He is the glue of everywhere that he goes, because he travels a lot throughout the shows in the many different seasons, and comes into contact with different groups of people from different backgrounds and such, and he's always respectful of, whether it be that they're different religions or whatever it is, even though there are people that are very blatantly disrespectful to him and his way of life, but he's always respectful. He's open-minded. He is a strong, honorable, honor is very important to him, an honorable man. He's loyal. I don't think I've ever seen a character besides Scott McCall and Styles in a show that is as loyal as Uhtred. He's incredibly smart and strategic when it comes to the ways of war and battle. So he's basically like, over time, he acquires a group of men who, again, would die for him, who would follow him to the ends of earth, to hell and back. Warriors like himself, who are just as loyal as he is, even when they don't agree with the direction that he is steering them, because he's their leader. Even though he doesn't, they don't always agree with the direction that he steers them in, they stick by him thick and thin, no matter what. The way that group forms is also really beautiful. I won't give it away, even though I want to talk about it. But the way that group forms, they meet during a very traumatic, they trauma bonded, basically. They meet through a very traumatic experience, and an experience that they had to help each other survive through, literally survive through. They had to be, when one person was weak, the other person had to be strong and say, hey, you will not give up. We are here with you. You can do this. You're strong enough. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep pushing. And the way, it was just a beautiful bonding for the group in terms of how they came together. But Uhtred kind of at some point in the series has some sort of like servitude. I don't know how else to put it. He has to become in service of the king, Alfred. I have such mixed feelings about Alfred. What did I call him before? I hope I said Alfred, but I have such mixed feelings about him, because there are times when I like him, and then there are times when I'm like, Alfred is shady AF. I can't stand him. Get him off my screen, because he literally does Uhtred so dirty at so many different points throughout all the seasons. Like, it boggles my mind. But Uhtred is duty bound to him because he gave his word. And I'm telling you, Alfred does some really crappy things to Uhtred, like promising him things that he never delivers on, and promising to help him with things that he knows are incredibly important to Uhtred, that he then reneges and takes back, and he's like, oh, actually, I'm not going to do that for you. I'm not going to help you with that. Like, it's disgusting. But Uhtred is a man of his word. Like I said, he's honorable. was like Gilmore Girls, which I love Gilmore Girls. It's just not a favorite of mine, but my comfort show is Pretty Little Liars. I cannot even begin to explain how much I love it, so let's read the synopsis. Give you some keyboard clicks. Keyboard clicks. Erase, 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 erase. At this point, I'm just gonna read all the stuff off of Prime, because they seem to have the most comprehensive breakdowns of what something is about. Why am I typing in all caps? Why am I yelling at Amazon? Why? So, I'm sure that many people already know what this is about, but Pretty Little Liars. Set 1 year after the disappearance of Allison, the manipulative queen bee, the 1 hour drama revolves around 4 16-year-old girlfriends, Aria, Spencer, Hannah, and Emily, who each receive taunting messages suggesting Allison is watching them. Linked by their former bond and the panic and confusion the messages cause, the estranged friends are reunited, though each girl has her own secrets. So you're gonna see a theme and the reasons. One of the main reasons, there's always multiple different reasons I love a show, but I can't go into all of it, or this video would be too long. But one of the main reasons I typically gravitate towards shows is usually like loyalty, the loyalty amongst the main group of friends, of warriors, of whatever, you know, in the context of whatever that group classifies as. Loyalty is everything to me. It's really, really big to me. And so I like shows that display that in spades. So one of the biggest reasons I love Pretty Little Liars, again, is the loyalty between these friends once they fully come together and reunite with one another. Now, of course, it's not, they have their hiccups, you know, they argue, they fight, and they don't always see eye to eye and agree on things, and the messages that they get on their phones are always signed off the letter A. So this person that is taunting them through text message and blackmailing them essentially, because A seems to know all their dirty little secrets. Sometimes at certain points in the show, gets one of them to kind of go against the group in a way that could be considered turning on them, but nothing too crazy, I don't think. Another reason I really like this show, though, aside from my always number one main reason, is I love that Aria, Spencer, Hannah, and Emily all have each other, and no matter what they go through, they have this bond with one another, and they are living a life not with the blackmail, but they're living a life that I've always wanted with my friends. So I've always been the sort of person, again, bringing up my past in childhood, where I was the loner, and I never had more than like 2 friends at a time. My best friend, as you guys know, has been in my life for over a decade at this point, but aside from that person, I've never had more than like 2 friends at a time. I was never popular. I never wanted to be. I was someone that thoroughly despised the popular crowd. I very much, as an introvert, liked not having a huge group of people, because I just don't have the energy to keep up with all these different personalities anyways. But the idea of it is something that I've always enjoyed, right? And so, you know, they have these huge sleepovers and get-togethers, and they just spend so much time together, and I've never really had that. And I never really felt a part of a group, you know, a part of a community. And that's always been something, even though I was fine being a loner, in the back of my mind and in my heart, it's always been something that I've craved, you know, knowing what it would be like to be a part part of something like that. And so I love Pretty Little Liars for that, for the bond and the connection and the sense of community that these four girls have throughout the entirety of the series. Also, I like how I like mysteries. Like, I like trying to unravel a mystery, and oftentimes when I'm watching something, I can figure it out before it's revealed on screen. But with Pretty Little Liars, I was not able to do that. They did the most outlandish twists ever, and it always kept me on my toes, and I love that. But that's one of my favorites. It's my comfort show. I love Pretty Little Liars. It's a popular one. Pretty much everyone watching this, I'm sure, has either heard of it and or watched it. So I don't have to go too much into what it is and what it's about. Out of the four girls, so this is a more popular show, so if I give a few spoilers away, it should be fine. I love Aria. I love all of them, honestly. If I had to pick a least favorite, it would probably be Spencer. And I love Spencer, don't get me wrong, I love all of them, but she's my least favorite of the bunch. Sorry, Spence. Also, I don't like that Spencer got with Hannah's ex / Hannah, the love of Hannah's life, even though obviously they broke up and they hadn't been together for some time. But still, there's something so shady about that. Like, your best friend was with this man for years, and then they break up, and you and him are hooking up, and then you become a couple. Like, I know I just talked about loyalty, but that was one of the things that to me was very unloyal. I hated Paige with a passion. I hated, oh my god, literally one of the first interactions they have is Paige trying to drown Emily. Like, what the that's just forgiven, that's just okay. Make it make sense. So next on the list, I've got to unlock my computer, is Switched at Birth. I love this show. So Switched at Birth, I was about to give you in my own words, which I suppose I can. I'm really only giving you the breakdown synopsis wise because I wanted to add in some keyboard clicks as like an added background trigger. So I guess I'll give you their breakdown of what it is. So 16 years ago, one mistake changed two families forever. When two newborns were switched at birth. Bay grew up in a healthy family, while Daphne, who lost her hearing as a child, was raised by a single mom in a working class neighborhood. So, this show centers around Baconish, a teenager in high school who is raised like going to prep school. It's something that you have to pay like $30,000 a year for your child to attend. It's one of those rich things because her father is a famous baseball player, one of the best, one of the greats in this fictional world. And so their family is rich. And her mom is a stay-at-home mom, you know. Catherine Kenish is her mom's name. I love Catherine. She's the stereotypical housewife. She flits around cooking and cleaning and decorating all the time and making sure everyone in the family, Bay, her brother Toby, and their father, why am I forgetting the dad's name? I forgot his name, but their father, dang, what is his name? John. Making sure everyone has what they need. And then so Baconish goes to she asks her mom to get them DNA tested. Because all Bay's life, she's never fit in. Her family, her entire family, her mom, her dad, and her brother are redheads. She has black hair. They, fair skin, freckled. Or not fair skin, but freckled, and she has like, I was gonna say unblemished, but freckles aren't blemishes, but she has no freckles. She doesn't have the same build as them. It's a whole thing, so she's always felt like an outsider in her family, and therefore an outsider at school, because in school everyone would always ask her, why don't you and your brother look alike? Why do you and your family not have any sort of resemblance? I didn't even realize, but again, Teen Wolf, Scott's an outsider. Last Kingdom, Uhtred's an outsider. In Pretty Little Liars, Hannah was an outsider. And then in this, Bay, an outsider. I didn't even realize, but I guess that's another common theme that I like in TV shows and such. But anyway, so they get DNA tested, and it comes back that Bay Kinish is 99.9% not your daughter. It says, it reads to her parents, and they're like, what? So did my candle burn out? I'm smelling it. I think one of them is a 2-wick, one of them burned out. So they do this investigation to find out what happened, find out that their biological child, who is Daphne, was switched at birth with Bay. So these two families come together. Daphne is deaf, so a lot of the show is done in, there's talking obviously, but a lot of the whole show really has sign language in it. And Bay wants to get to know her biological parents and grandmother and stuff, and she is upset when she finds out the truth, because she's like, my whole life I've never fit in, and now I find out that I should have been, instead of Bay Kinish, I should have been Daphne Vasquez. And she tries to figure out what her life would have been like by wanting to know everything about the neighborhood Daphne grew up in. So she goes to visit the neighborhood, and it's a rough neighborhood on like East Riverside, where cars get broken into all the time, and they have to have bars on the windows because people will break into your home and stuff. And so it's a whole thing. And then Daphne, she's upset, but she doesn't really express her anger until later in the series about the switch, because she's like, instead of being Daphne Vasquez, I should have been Bay Kinish, and I should have had a better life. Because while she always acknowledges that her mom did the very best she could, she's bitter when she finds out that she could have lived in this beautiful mansion and gone to a better school, and most importantly, that she wouldn't have been deaf. Because what happened is, she wasn't born deaf, but she caught meningitis when she was like 2, I believe, and that led to her becoming deaf. And so she's like, if I had never been switched at birth, I would have never caught meningitis and gone deaf. And all this, it's crazy. I'm rambling, but I think it's really a beautiful show, and I have a deaf cousin. So I've always been intrigued by sign language, but I see her like once every few years. We're not close, but every time I see her, I used to always get rubbed the wrong way about how, in order to communicate with her, I would have to like pull out my phone and type things in and stuff. Not by fault of her, but me. Like, I'm like, I need to learn sign language, but I never took it seriously. And then I started watching Switched at Birth, and it made me think about my cousin. And in the show, the deaf people in the show talk about how much it means to them when someone learns sign language to communicate and make it easier on them. So I started learning sign language. I got pretty far. I studied it for a couple of months. But then, because I don't have constant contact with my cousin, and because I don't know any other deaf people, I don't have anyone to speak sign language with. And so because of that, once I learned, the alphabet and a lot of basic words and how to phrase sentences and things, I started becoming rusty because I wasn't using it in conversation, and I stopped studying every day, and then I forgot a lot of it. But it's something that I do really want to ASL, which is American Sign Language, is art. Like, it is beautiful. And I'm mesmerized when I watch Switched at Birth and see their signing, and it's phenomenal. The next show is Sherlock Holmes, the one on Netflix, and the one that is played by Benedict Cumberbatch, okay? Because there are many different versions of Sherlock Holmes, TV shows, movies, and things like that. But my favorite Sherlock is the Sherlock that is played by Benedict Cumberbatch. I love that series. I've always been fascinated with Sherlock Holmes as a character. I think the way that his mind supposedly works and the way that he's able to solve mysteries and crimes and things is absolutely beautiful. In the show, he has this thing where it's like his mind palace or his mind vault or whatever, and he literally sits down and goes into this like meditative state, and then it shows him like opening files and like it's alluding to that's how his mind works. Like, he's able to compartmentalize really well and then kind of forget about it, but then when he needs that information, go into his vault and pull up the, like, it's just, I love it. I'm gonna start being a little quicker because this is already over an hour long and I don't want this video to be too long. So I love that show. I'll give you the synopsis. Sherlock Holmes, an analytical deduction fanatic, is helping the police out with their inquiries for fun when he runs into potential flatmate Dr. John Watson. Fresh from serving in the war in Afghanistan and sporting a limp. In spite of Watson's initial skepticism, Holmes's brilliant mind and dangerous lifestyle offer the stimulation he craves, and the two quickly forge an alliance. Sherlock provides the inspired leaps of intellect, while Watson keeps his friends flights of fancy grounded. It's the perfect partnership. Uplifting, action-packed, and highly entertaining, with sparky scripts and unforgettable performances by the two leads. This is Sherlock for a new generation. Benedict Cumberbatch plays Sherlock, and then Martin Freeman plays Dr. Watson. The show is absolutely phenomenal. One of my favorite scenes from the show is, it's later on so it's not really a series, like it's a episode based thing, but instead of calling it series, they call it parts, like part 1, part 2, part 3. But one of my favorite scenes is where Sherlock and Watson get drunk, like smashed, hammered, completely wasted, but they still try to solve a case that this woman approaches them with. And they go to this apartment looking for clues and stuff, but it's like a montage or a collage of like clips of them just being off their ass, hammered, and doing more harm than good, and not really finding anything substantial. And I can't explain it. It's just so funny. It is so funny. And by the end of this particular scene, Sherlock Holmes is on the floor. So his face is on the floor, but his butt is in the air. And, you know, his knees are on the floor. So he's basically like in this just really odd position, knocked out, snoring. And the girl that hires them is like, is he okay? And Watson, who is also drunk, is like, he's cluing for looks, but like in a very drunk manner. And the girl is like, it's just, I'm not making it funny, but it is so funny, like cluing for looks. No, you mean looking for clues? Like it's hilarious. That's one of my favorite episodes. Okay, so I want to do this thing where I do honorable mentions. I was watching a booktuber who was doing a video on like their favorite books for the month of whatever. It was an old one, and they listed all their favorites and talked about them, and then they were like, I want to throw in some honorable mentions, things that aren't my favorite up and said honorable mentions in like wavy text, and then she started talking. I don't know how to do all that. I'm not a fancy editor, so let's pretend this is the slide. Honorable mentions. Okay, the first honorable mention is the originals. Now, I am someone, I'm just gonna be honest, I'm gonna be frank with you. I prefer the originals over the Vampire Diaries. The Vampire Diaries is great, but the originals to me is the more adult, sexier, better version of the Vampire Diaries, because the Vampire Diaries, you know, it's teenagers in high school and stuff, like there's nothing wrong with that. But in the vampire, or in the originals, it's not, that world is not, no one's in high school, they're adults, and it's in New Orleans, which I've always wanted to go to, and it's just great. And so the originals is the more adult, sexier version of the Vampire Diaries, and Klaus Michelson is who Damon Salvatore tries to be. Now, that's no shade on Damon. I love him. I'm Team Damon all the way. I love Damon, but Klaus is that badass. He's who Damon wishes he was. I'm just gonna be real. Klaus, he the man. And so how everyone in the Vampire Diaries always struggles between Team Damon or Team Stefan. My dilemma, my personal dilemma, is Team Klaus or Team Elijah, because they're brothers in the show, and I kid you not, I cannot decide. I love Klaus. Klaus is unhinged AF. Like, he's psychotic, and as I've talked about before, I need to be psych eval'd because I love Joe Goldberg, who's also psychotic. So it's no surprise that I love Klaus. I just have a thing in fiction for morally gray, unhinged characters. Okay. And then Elijah is the polished brother. He is who Stefan tries to be. You know, honorable, polished, the good brother. And I just cannot decide. There are certain scenes that happen and I'm like, Klaus is my husband, and then there are certain scenes with Elijah where I'm like, he has my heart. Like, I cannot decide. So the originals is an honorable. Oh, and I also very much prefer Haley, who is the lead in the originals, the lead female, over Elena. Nothing wrong with Elena. I've never finished the Vampire Diaries series out completely. I started being uninterested when Elena left, so I don't have anything against Elena. But I much prefer Haley over Elena. She is a strong warrior, goddess, queen. I'm always more drawn to the strong female leads rather than the overly emotionally draining and taxing female leads. Not that there's anything wrong with emotion. I just am always more drawn to the strong female leads, and Haley is very much that. The next honorable mention is One Tree Hill. Oh, and these honorable mentions, I'm not going to type in the synopsis. So One Tree Hill is basically about these high schoolers. And it's about these two brothers, half brothers. And there's a lot that goes on. You can Google it, but One Tree Hill is popular enough that I think most people have heard of it. It's not my favorite, but I do thoroughly enjoy it. I was obsessed with it when I was watching it, and I hit the mic, and for a while, I'm adjusting my position, my chair is squeaking. For a while, it was one of my favorite shows at the time in my life that I was watching it, and I have rewatched that show thousands of times. But unpopular opinion, I don't like Peyton. I don't like Peyton, and I think Brooke deserved better. Lucas and Brooke should have been in game. Don't at me with the whole, but Lucas and Peyton were meant for each other. The star-crossed lovers, the emo people, like whatever. I don't like Peyton. reasons. One of them being she lost all my respect when she had intimacy, when she got intimate with Lucas, knowing that Lucas was in a relationship with her best friend Brooke. Are you kidding me? And there are people that are like, oh, they stopped before it went too far. No. The second their lips touched, they went too far. The second, even before the physical contact came into play, the second they both realized that their emotions for one another weren't going away and was transforming into something other than friendship, they crossed the line. To me, betrayal, I mean, you already know loyalty is everything to me from the beginning and from the current themes, themes that I like within shows. Betrayal is no. I'm being deadly serious. It's a hard no for me, and that was the most shady thing and the biggest betrayal she could have done to her best friend, the one that was there for you when your mom died and you were going through the most horrific time ever. No. There are people in my life, ex-friends or ex-partners and things that they're dead to me. Obviously they're all alive, but they just don't exist to me anymore. Once you betray me, it's done, cut off. You don't live rent-free in my head at all. You're wiped from everything. It's done. Now, it's not all the blame is not on the female. Lucas lost my respect as well, and he used to be my favorite male up until that point in the show. And after that, Nathan became my favorite. My favorite couple in that show is Nathan and Haley. I love them. They're literal perfection. The next honorable mention is a series called Gold Digger. Now, this series is centered around, it's based in England, and it's centered around this younger guy that falls in love with this older woman, and everyone around them, she's also rich, and everyone around them thinks that the younger man is only with her for her money, hence the name of the series, Gold Digger. And it's kind of like a mystery, and it has a lot of flashbacks where you're trying to figure out. No one knows a lot about this man that she falls in love with, the main character, the young man. No one knows a lot about him. They can't dredge up anything from his past. When they look him up, they can't really find anything on him. He's just a big mystery. The series is a thriller / romance. And so this woman's family is trying to convince her that, he's a bad person and to dump him because he's just using her. But she's like, no, I love him and I believe he loves me. But then doubt starts to creep in, not because of the money, but because she can't really find anything out about him. And she's like, who are you and who are you really? And we don't really find out who he really is and what his story is until the end of the series. Honorable mentions are over with. Okay, so back to my current favorites. So the next current favorite I have is another period piece, and it is called Medici the Magnificent. Let's type it in. I gotta readjust so I can get my computer close to the mic and you can hear the keyboard clicks. Oh baby, don't do this to me. It wasn't typing where I needed it to. How you spell Medici? Medici the Magnificent. Yes. Okay, so Medici the Magnificent. In 15th century Renaissance Florence, the visionary Medici dynasty flexes its power in politics and the arts, risking its rivals' lethal opposition. So it tells the story of this Florentine family, and they run a bank. They are one of the richest families in Italy, and they are rich because they are one of the biggest banks. They own one of the biggest banks in Italy, and it's basically just a mash of art, Italy, romance, sex, and politics. portray a headstrong monarch, beautiful, passionate, and poised at the very beginning of her tumultuous rise to power. Now, Mary and Francis, they're not my favorite, but they're one of my favorite couples on a TV show ever. Their romance is tumultuous AF, but beautiful. The way he looks at Mary, like the sun and the moon rise and fall by her will. Like, he just, oh my god, he loves that woman and she loves him, and it's just amazing. Now, it's not all about romance. It's about castle politics, kingly, queenly politics. That's the word that they use. Again, very different from like the whole Democrat Republic thing now. Like, it's nothing like that. It's back in those times, Mary Queen of Scots and King Francis, you know, their version of politics was like what's going on in the castle, what's going on between the other kings and queens of other regions. This king just, or this queen just died, so Mary, we want you to claim that throne, and you know, stuff like that. That's politics to them. I love the show, but the thing that really gets me, to be quite frank, is the romance of the show. And oh my god, talk about emotionally draining. There's something that happens in the show in like seasons. So the show has 4 seasons, and in like season, I think 3, something happens and someone leaves the show by dying, and I was so emotionally distraught. Like, I had to take a break from the show. It just threw me for a loop. I could not handle it. The next is a show called Twisted, which is not very well known. It used to come on ABC Family, which is now called Freeform or something. Like, it's not even ABC Family anymore. I watched it when it was airing on TV. Had to wait every week for the new episode. It got canceled, so they never did a second season, and it left on a cliffhanger, and I'm so salty about it still to this day. But I'd still recommend you watch it. It's a great show. It's about this teenager named Danny Desai. Okay, back up. It's about these 3 people who, these 3 teenagers, Danny, Joe, a girl named Joe, and then a girl named Lacey, and they grow up together, and then when they are in like 6th grade or something, Danny gets convicted for murdering his aunt, and it's a mystery because everyone's like, why'd you kill her, so he comes back years later. They show that at the beginning, and then they flash forward to high school, and Danny has just left juvie for his sentence. He just got out of juvie, and he comes back to the town that they live in, and he's trying to reintegrate back into society, and he wants to reconnect with his 2 childhood best friends, Joe and Lacey, who Joe and Lacey have fallen apart since Danny went to juvie. And so anyway, he wants to reconnect with his friends, and Lacey is not here for it. She's like, no, you're a murderer. And Joe is a little more. Joe makes it become a mystery. Her dad's a cop, so digging into things and trying to solve things comes natural to her. And she's like, why'd you kill her? And he will never say what happened and why. So Joe starts digging and trying to figure out what really truly happened that day. Did Danny actually kill his aunt, or didn't he? And if he did, then why? And if he didn't, then why did he lie about it? So it's one of those types of things. It's really was about to start yelling for help. So I'm gonna end the video. The last thing I was trying to tell you was I really like the world's most extraordinary homes TV show. Because I'm really into architecture. I love a good what am I trying to say? I love a well-built building. Anyway, I'm gonna end the video. I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened. But I wanted to close this out for you and not just end abruptly. And honestly, I could use some company right now. I wish I had someone to call or text, but it's 1 a.m. and I know everyone's asleep. I'm really overwhelmed. I'm scared because I don't know what's happening. I've never felt this way before. And I'm like reluctant to close out because if something suddenly happens to me, at least it'll be on camera. Mom, I love you. Nana, Auntie Kennedy, I love you. I don't have it in me to do an outro. I'm so sorry, but know that I love you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. If this video gets posted, I'm still alive.